Welcome to This Just In, the show bringing you the latest advancements in healthcare, strategy, innovation, and public policy. And now, for the fastest voice in healthcare, here's your host, Justin Barnes.
Thank you for tuning in and welcome to This Just In. I'm your host, Justin Barnes. In these segments, I'll bring you the latest advancements in healthcare, strategy, innovation, and public policy. As always, we're broadcasting from the This Just In studios on the Business Radio X network, as well as the Healthcare Now radio network. For this episode, my 248th episode, we have a great, insightful, and first-time guest, Justin Norden from GSR Ventures. Welcome to the show, Justin.
Justin, thank you so much for having me. It's great to be here.
You got it, my friend. So where are you calling in from today?
I'm calling in from San Francisco, where it is cloudy and overcast.
Very cool. I actually lived in Palo Alto for a year back in the dot-com boom. And then I moved to just below the Bay Bridge. And I was trying to think of the street that I was on. I remembered it for the longest time. And now I can't pull it forward. But anyhow, where in the city are you?
I'm right in Mission Bay. So it's right where all the biotech is by UCSF, and about a block away from the brand new Chase Center for the Warriors.
Very cool. Very cool. So since my audience has not heard your voice before, where'd you grow up, attend college, all that good stuff?
Perfect. I'll start from the beginning.
Please.
So I grew up in Seattle, where got to come up under, seeing Microsoft, seeing what that looked like with technology, seeing what growing a big company could be. Ended up going to college out at Carleton College in Minnesota. I actually went there to play ultimate Frisbee, which in hindsight is a little bit crazy, but was able to do what I needed to do academically. Studied computer science and got my pre-med requirements done. Ended up going out to Cambridge in England, doing a master's in computational biology, focused on machine learning and genomics. And then, finally finished up doing my medical degree and MBA at Stanford.
Phenomenal. Well, actually, the ultimate Frisbee is not too far of a stretch for me, just because I went to a 5-college exchange in Massachusetts, Amherst, Mass, and Hampshire College is one of the colleges in my group, and they had ultimate Frisbee as one of their classes. And so we talked about that. I did not take it, but I certainly knew about ultimate Frisbee during college years. So it's awesome.
Absolutely.
So where does your passion for healthcare come from? You became an MD, a doctor, but where'd that passion originate from?
Yeah. So, like many who end up choosing to go into medicine, I'd grown up actually in a family of physicians. I had physicians on my mom's side, although she was not. And my father actually was also a physician. So I got to see from an early age, what that meant taking care of someone, what that meant diving into the science, what that meant being curious about how the body works, about how things come together. And so while that was present from early on, it wasn't until college when you actually, get a little bit more exposure, spent some time in the hospital, spent some time in the ED, shadowing, doing some volunteering, and then deciding, yes, this is where I want to be. This is where I want to spend time. And then actually spent some time at the NCI out in Bethesda in Maryland, where I got to see, okay, this is what science looks like. This is what, more intense patient care looks like, and said, hey, this is for me. And I think that was really from the healthcare side. I think like so many others, I think what was a little bit different about my own story was, again, starting back from growing up in Seattle, I just had this interest in technology and seeing what was possible. Because I got to go to a liberal arts school and I got to study computer science during my undergrad, by the time I got to med school, it was, hey, I know there's another way to do things. I know there's a way to automate things. Yes. I can see what technology can do. And, that was in my personal statements for medical school. I want to combine technology and healthcare because I know there's a better way to get care to everyone.
That's phenomenal. I love it. Very cool. So tell us about GSR Ventures a little bit. This is newer to me, and as we're talking off air, I have not had a venture fund or a private equity fund join the show in probably a year now. So this is extremely timely for me and for us and for my audience. But tell us a bit about your company and also your investment thesis.
Absolutely. So at GSR Ventures, we're actually a team of physicians, former entrepreneurs, engineers who fundamentally share the same belief that technology can change how we're delivering healthcare or making healthcare possible today. We have a little bit over $3.5 billion under management and focus on early stage investing, meaning seed through Series B investments in health technology. So that equates to roughly $100,000 to up to $100 million checks. And what we're focused on health technology, it's almost easiest to start with what we won't do. Mm-hmm. We won't do traditional biotechnology where we're developing assets. We won't do traditional medical devices where we're planning to build a company and sell it to one of the big med device players. We're really looking for companies trying to take a new technology or emerging technology and go after a really thorny problem in healthcare. And we're not looking for 10, 20% QI improvements. We're really looking for 2 times, 3 times, 10 times, if not 100 times improvements over the status quo. These are the big shots that can fundamentally change how we're delivering healthcare. And that's what gets us really excited. So a few examples of companies and areas we've looked at. We've played in the decentralized clinical trial space, seeing that we can do trials in a new way. Mm-hmm. We've made investments in asynchronous telemedicine platforms. So not just one-to-one video chats with the doctor, but how do you kind of really build in kind of asynchronous communication and AI into those systems? We've done things in digital therapeutics. How do you deliver software truly as FDA-approved, validated medicine? All areas that get us very excited.
Wow, that's very cool. I didn't. That's a large fund. You guys have you have a lot under management, so that's terrific. What are some of the spaces that you're excited about today, or without showing too much of your playbook? But what do you see out there, maybe in the next year or two, that you think is a very fast evolving or an exciting corner of healthcare or health IT?
Absolutely. Well, yeah, I think especially if we go over the past few years, a lot of people have gotten excited about digital health and health IT. Lots and lots of investor dollars have flown into the space and all sorts of areas. One of the areas where I still think there hasn't been enough focus and where I'm actively looking today is companies targeting Medicaid. This is an area that, we all know there's always been a huge clinical need. But I think what's fundamentally changed in the past few years is we're starting to see plans adopt digital technologies. We're starting to see plans sign with startups in a way that was really inconceivable a few years ago. And, today, if you look at Medicare Advantage, there's been more than $20 billion raised in startups trying to attract members where, we know there's a big market.
Yep.
And on the other side, we have Medicaid, where there's been almost very few, $1.5 billion or so, raised by startups focused on these populations. And here, there's also, there's no pushback. In Medicare Advantage, you have all the big plans pushing, trying to get these patients on board. And in Medicaid, you really have, almost a lack of people, trying to treat these patients, trying to take advantage. And then this is the perfect opportunity where technology can fundamentally deliver care at a lower cost, which is what we need if any business is going to succeed with the Medicaid population. So that's one big area we're excited about.
Absolutely. Are you familiar with Anish Chopra by chance? Do you know Anish? Okay.
Yeah.
He's not. I mean, he's in a broad space, but he's just someone when you talk about that, he's tackling that from a little bit different perspective. But I mean, just the money that's being invested in, and also in Medicaid. When you look at the expansion, and obviously almost every corner of the country, I completely agree with your thoughts there. But he's somebody that I always love to collaborate with, and at every opportunity. And he's just someone who's kind of touching that space from time to time. So he's obviously good to have on the radar screen. So reviewing that Rock Health report, that just came out last week, that found, U.S. digital health startups raised $10.3 billion in the first half of 2022. And obviously that's putting it, on track to fall short of 2021. But obviously there's a lot of bright spots out there. I think you just kind of covered one in a way. But what are some of your thoughts there on what to look for in that report, or, what's going to be better or worse out there?
Yeah, and I think, especially as I know you don't have a lot of investors on the show, things really have changed from an investment standpoint. in 2022 compared to last year. And, there's less dollars going into this space. Valuations that startups are raising at have come down significantly. The pace at which people are doing deals has come down significantly. And so I think there's been some worry that, oh my gosh, is digital health changing? Are people no longer investing? And I think that's not the case. I think 2021 was more of an anomaly. There was probably too much money that went into the sector, a little bit too fast, without kind of the proper work digging into the companies, without the proper oversight. And I think 2022 is a little bit more of a return to normal. It's not that the sky is falling. We're still seeing good companies raise at very good valuations. It wasn't what it was last year, but it's at very healthy prices, and companies are still growing. And unfortunately, it's not like we've solved healthcare. All the problems are still there. And so yes, things really have changed from last year. And I think some of the, let's call it, visitors who maybe invest in digital health for the first time, didn't know too much about it, ran in, and some of those people have left. But fundamentally, the market is still extremely strong for startups, especially emerging in the space, especially at the Series A. One of the notes from the Rock Health report was Series A, round sizes were roughly the same between this year and last year. There were fewer deals done, but it was roughly the same. But at the later stage, things were a little bit smaller. I think, and it's not just unique to digital health and healthcare across the country. Valuations, especially at the later stage, fell as our public markets, shrink from the valuations that we saw previously. So, those are a few things from the Rock Health report. Yes, the numbers are smaller. We won't match the invested capital from 2022, but it's actually from 2021, but it's actually probably a more sustainable amount.
Yeah, I completely agree. I'm a veteran and raised my first round in 1996. Is that 1997? So it's, so I come from kind of the old school. And so I totally agree with you that we're returning back to, the way it's, the way it really needs to be and the way it should be. And I completely agree with the lack of oversight or the limited amount of oversight. I don't put, to put anybody down, but we need to get back into kind of a little bit of the old school of, MBOs and key performance indicators and KPIs, just from a leadership team perspective, at a management team, at board level. I think our cadence has got a little bit off on that regard, at least from what I saw out there. So I completely agree with what you mentioned, and also hopefully how we're right sizing what we need to do. But again, there's still, as you very well know, a lot of money available. And if you have a good team and a good product and a good strategy, there's plenty of opportunity in partners out there. So I think you would completely agree with that. Yeah. Awesome. So my show focuses a lot on best practices. I mean, I think my makeup of my audience is almost half CEOs and C-suite executives, mainly from healthcare, but a little bit outside of healthcare, just listening to best practices. So what are some of the major themes or trends in healthcare or digital health today that you're seeing? Because, I mean, we, as you mentioned earlier on, it's a quick evolving industry, and that's usually a great thing. But I also like to make sure that we keep our finger on the pulse. So from your perspective, your perch, what do you see as some of the major themes or trends today?
Absolutely. So, today, I think we had, everyone knows now about digital health. And I like to bring this up because you just go back a few years, and I still remember in my training, I talked, hey, I'm interested in industry. I'm interested in what this intersection looks like between technology and healthcare. And people mostly, laughed it off. If you're interested in this, go do something in biotech, go do something elsewhere. It wasn't yet a serious field. And I think the interesting point we're at today with COVID, with the adoption of telemedicine and new tools is, everyone now, digital health is top of mind. Transformation is top of mind for every health system, every leader. And so we can move on to, okay, so what does that mean? What do we do with this? So one key theme that's been on people's mind for the last few years, but is starting to accelerate, is around what are we going to do with AI? And this is a really, important topic for me and something we look at extremely closely at GSR, because fundamentally we do believe that AI will transform how we deliver healthcare and how we get care to patients. But the key question is how. And so when people started first talking about AI, it was AI is going to replace every radiologist. AI is going to replace every doctor. We don't need these people around the table. We're going to make clinical decisions. And to me, as a physician, that's actually really the wrong area to go for. It's the wrong area to think about automating. Where we want to play with AI is in the administration side of it. We want to play on the automation side for supply chain, for logistics, for non-patient care facing operations within healthcare, where we can really make the biggest leaps and do so in the safest way. And so I think people have been so focused around AI, around completely automating people, completely automating away clinical decision making. And while there is a role to play, we should really focus on augmentation and moving people, giving people the right information, helping people out rather than making a full decision. For anyone who might be familiar with autonomous vehicles,
Right.
This means giving people lane assist, cruise control within a healthcare system and within their decision making, not trying to drive the car completely. And I actually wrote about this as I've spent time working in the autonomous vehicle space. So I wrote up a New England Journal of Medicine perspective on what we can learn in healthcare from AI in the autonomous vehicle world. And so that's one trend I really think we need to focus on, and will be top of mind for systems that adopt these tools, gain these automation advantages, but do so in a thoughtful way.
Excellent. And for those that may join us a little late today, my special guest today is Justin Norden from GSR Ventures. So I think following up on that, and I completely agree. The only thing I will say before I ask my next question is I also chaired and founded a think tank. And part of that, one of the studies we did a couple of years ago, we actually had a great think tank right before COVID hit. And we haven't got back together since COVID hit, but I think our sixth or seventh think tank. And the area with AI and care, and one of the physicians spoke on this was, and I completely agree with your thoughts there, using it on the administrative side. And I think the part that we were a little surprised when the doctor presented and said, because I think his sentiments were similar to yours, even this was a couple of years ago, but where the doctors were a little bit more open to care-assisted AI, not AI taking over any care in any way, but if there are aspects that care can be, basically administratively can be augmented with AI. And they're open to the idea of somebody helping them, but obviously the doctor makes the final decision. But if you want to serve up, 2 or 3 very quick points or thoughts for them to think of after analyzing data, and then they're open to that. So it's more, I call it care-assisted AI or AI, care-assisted AI. Or care-assisted by AI. So anyhow, that was one of the areas where, I think that there was a little bit more openness and more opportunity on the care side. But specifically, I think, so even on that side, and actually I've had a good friend of the show is John Halamka, and he does a lot on AI as well. And he's mentioned a few best practices, but what are some of your thoughts? Just regarding best practices on how we could, and you mentioned certainly on the automation side, but anything else that you would share for someone to say, hey, you know what, we need to explore AI within our organization. Is there low hanging fruit or some areas that you could tell a hospital CEO or a health system or even a large practice or lab, or where would AI benefit them, or where they could start to look at in that regard?
Absolutely. And so within, what problems do you want to tackle? I think there's a few ways to look at it. You want to tackle a problem that has real business or clinical value. You want to make sure the problem you're solving with AI has real value. And then you want to make sure the problem is solvable by AI.
Right.
And we can do this easily with, limited amounts of training data and get something working where everyone can see benefit. So actually, one of the companies in our portfolio we work with, a company called Artisight, deploys AI solutions kind of as a platform to hospitals. And one of the things that they do is, hospital CEOs are, so overrun with, different point solutions. I need one solution for this, one solution for that. Is thinking about, okay, how do we deploy AI as a strategy across all of these different organizations, all of these different areas within the hospital? but start with something easy at first. So one example of this is, around new hand washing regulations. We know we need to measure this. It's a measurable report that we need to report on. We need, a certain number of observed hand washings in a certain period of time. And we can do this with AI. We can use computer vision. We can put it outside of a patient room. It's a pretty easy problem. So we know we can have very high sensitivity and specificity for kind of what we're flagging to measure. And it gets the job done. So start with something easy. Start with something that has business value, that is on your radar, and then you can get done. Then you can start to graduate to harder problems. How do you think about, fall detection in a patient room for someone who might be worried? How do you think about OR efficiency? Where again, you don't need to shoot for perfection. You don't need to get to, I get everything right every single time. But wait a second, I can get value even if I'm only 90% of the way there. So you choose problems where you don't need to get a perfect solution, but using AI, I can get a fair amount of the way there. And I implement this in a way that the systems will get better over time. And so I choose a partner to work with, or I build a team that I get value immediately, and that value continues to grow as the AI solutions train and get better. And so those are just a few key points and best practices for thinking about how tactically, how do you deploy AI within a healthcare system?
It's awesome. You would have been great in our think tank. You're spot on. I love it. I love it.
Happy to join anytime. I know it hasn't happened since COVID, but happy to fly out.
Would love it. So the other side is, and I love to share wisdom from my guests with my audience, and certainly you have access to a lot of businesses and leadership teams. So what wisdom would you share for CEOs and leadership teams, listening to this show today, or even out there in the industry? Because obviously, I'm sure you have some great nuggets I'd love to share with them.
Absolutely. Well, one thing at the top of every mind of every CEO, every leader is, what's happening with today's market? How do I keep my team motivated? How do I keep my team together? And I think the biggest thing that we see with kind of all the different leaders we work with is, trying to be transparent with your team about what's going on and being consistent with the information you're sharing and showing. When those things start to turn off, that's when you start to see people leave. That's when you start to see people get anxious. That's when you start to see mistakes. And so being transparent and consistent from the top can just really help teams kind of stay clear, stay focused in what's kind of really a choppy and turbulent time. I think one other thing that we'll mention, just that we see kind of in our best CEOs and leadership teams is, picking a few key goals. I think this is so important. And, when we see startups that we're working with today try to tackle too many things, you just see that lack of focus start to affect people. And we make progress in a few different areas, but, then we come together at a board meeting and it's, well, what have we accomplished? Where are we going? And we have lots of little things to talk about, but we can't really show progress. We can't show progress from one quarter to the next. And so those would just be two key takeaways kind of we see from working with our portfolio companies, especially in an interesting macroeconomic environment today.
Yeah, I think you're spot on. There's two things that I've done recently as a board member for one of my organizations, and that was actually to do a stack rank, but then really and that was for transparency as a leadership team, say, hey, who are top performers, really A through C, A through D, and those A's and B's, we want to certainly coach up, and we want to, make sure that we retain them. We want to make the C's the B's if possible. D's, we want to make C's if we can coach them, or, I say coach them up, coach them out. So that's the transparency side. And then the OKRs and having, say 3 goals as a leadership team. If that's simple. I mean, we march quarterly towards these 3 goals. And that way, every single time we meet, we know that we're making demonstrable change or, forward progress, or if we're not, let's adjust. But I love what you shared there and completely agree, and literally just left meetings last week in that regard. So it's awesome. So we have about 1 minute left or so. So I'm going to actually hyperspeed us a little bit, and I'll probably have you back. I can tell we're going to always have a good conversation. But one question I always like to ask my guests, and this usually turns into its own show with all the cool answers: where do you go to get or be inspired?
Oh, that's a great question. One of the places I felt most inspired this past year was actually teaching. So when I think of all the different activities and things that, fit in a VC schedule, the places I was most inspired was by my students. So I teach a course called The Digital Future of Healthcare at Stanford. It's roughly a third medical students, roughly a third students from Stanford GSB, and roughly a third engineering students and students from elsewhere. And they inspire me. I know my job is supposed to be to inspire them and talk to them about what the future of healthcare might look like. But really, you hear, you see the most motivated, open, selfless people asking questions, being curious about what things could look like, and not coming in with ego or assumptions about how things are, but just imagining how things should be. And that motivates me. It keeps me away from the cynicism that sometimes we fall into as healthcare and as a profession, as physicians. And so being around students early, right, it really motivates me to say, okay, what's right? How do we shoot for this? And even though it's hard, let's make sure we keep trying.
I love it, Justin. Phenomenal answer. And thank you so much. You are a great guest, and we'll certainly have you back, my friend. Awesome.
Thank you so much.
You got it. And thank you to everyone for joining us and taking time out of your busy schedule to join the show. As always, you can track us on Twitter at HIT Advisor and use the hashtag ThisJustinRadio so you can respond to your comments from the show. If you missed any of the show or want to hear more, all the shows are posted on Apple iTunes, SoundCloud, iHeartRadio, and TuneIn. And obviously, you can check us out weekdays at 2:30 p.m. Eastern, 11:30 a.m. Pacific. And if you want to catch any more of the content, you can check us out also at justinbarnes.com. Thanks, everyone, and stay safe.